So today I really wanted to discuss building collapses in Nigeria. About a month ago I actually submitted an article publishing on construction challenges in Nigeria. Really enough, I was told it was a little boring. Since then we've had 2 building collapses.
It's in there.
This is my secretary of the Tavaji Market Association. One of their members is their 4 kids who was there.
This week on Wednesday in Nigeria, yet again, another building collapsed in Lagos Island, a mixed-use development that had a school on the top floor, residential apartments also in the building, and also shops on the ground level. Unfortunately went down at around 10 a.m. on Wednesday morning. Unfortunately, when the building would be, or the school part of the building definitely would be filled with students. So again, this building was marked for demolition by Lagos State, but apparently, I mean, it's not news. People were aware that the building had been marked. People were aware the building was unsafe.
People are saying that even the tenants are aware of the fact that their houses are not good to live in.
Unfortunately, Nigerians have become desensitized to warning signs, as poor construction has become common practice. If I put this on your building and I say it needs to be demolished, then within 60 days, 60 working days, this building needs to go down. Another thing you're facing are people in those areas basically just refusing to leave. They have nowhere else to go. At this point, they're actually willing to risk their lives, risk the life of their children. This is not going to be the first school building to collapse. In 2004, another school building in Jos collapsed. Its foundation could no longer support the weight due to a conversion. At the end of the day, they cannot afford to move anywhere else, especially in a place like Nigeria where you're paying your rent a year in advance. Especially if you've paid your rent in advance 3 months into the year, Lagos State is telling you need to evacuate with your family. The purchasing power of Nigerians right now in this economy is very weak. They don't just have it stacked up sitting in a savings account. Most of the average Nigerians living in Lagos Island do not have that disposable income to be able to move. So when you're delivering, these quick notices, you really do have to think about the impacts of the people, because they literally have nowhere else to go. And that's why they end up being in situations, where they're fighting the regulatory bodies that are trying to save their lives. Another avoidable tragedy. Lagos Island in particular is notorious for building collapses because of the way, the buildings have been erected, especially when these places are very densely populated, and a lot of the regulatory measures for how close buildings should be to one another are not enforced. So you actually find that buildings are ridiculously close to each other, to the point where emergency services at some points were not even able to navigate through the buildings or through the crowds of people also in the area to actually reach the site and render services. This building collapse, unfortunately, has claimed the lives of, we're hearing the figure of 14 people.
Right now, oh my God, they rescued a girl. She seems unstable at the moment, so we cannot tell if she is alive. Oh, she's alive! Wow! She is alive! That is so good. She's alive.
When I talk about this sense of mistrust, where local area boys were actually telling the safety agents to move out and let them handle the situation because they felt like they were not dealing with it fast enough. We also heard reports of people from inside the building calling their loved ones saying, look, we're still here, we're trapped. Since these reports have come out, the site has now been closed. It's now at, I think they call it ground zero, where everything is level and plain.
Those administering the rules must also be held liable for their own negligence in the enforcement of governing rules, as many have accused them of colluding with engineers, developers and landlords.
Practicing engineers today probably went to school before I was born. Continuous personal development that is monitored by regulatory bodies is essential. From a macroscopic level, the importation of substandard materials into Nigeria from countries such as China, Turkey, this needs to stop long term. Nigeria needs to start looking into manufacturing their own building materials and quality building materials, where we can see from A to B that this was manufactured in Nigeria. This not only gives us quality assurance, it also makes us a more sustainable country. It's valuable for us. It makes us more independent. It creates job opportunities. So again, talking about corruption in the industry and how that leads to or contributes to these building collapses and the frequency of them. Now, it's not enough to say we had this rule in place and they didn't listen, so it's not our fault that people died. No, you are also there to enforce these rules. That's why you're a government. And when it's other things that you want to enforce and impose on people, you know very well how to do it. We want to see that same passion when it comes to things that pertain to human life. You know, when these buildings go down, going back to the point of prosecution or the lack thereof, I think people feel very disheartened of these lives don't mean anything to them, because these people are not called to book. We seldom see prosecutions. And if you're not prosecuting anyone for such, it's just going to continue to happen. Every time a building collapses, we need to see formidable action that other people are deterred from doing the same. Designed this or signed off for this. We need to see actual prosecution. It's funny that in other parts of the world, because they want to give people that sense of safety and security and reassure the people, sometimes they even use someone who isn't even entirely to blame, or maybe only has a part to blame, but you know, he carries the burden of it. For people to be able to trust in their authority and to trust that, you know, this is not going to happen again. Fashola went on to discuss the criminal implications of professional negligence resulting in the loss of life. He said, how many professionals have been jailed for building collapses? So basically, this is just laying emphasis on, you know, things always seem to get lost in the courts, as many people make reference to it. So it needs to be a swift prosecution by the judiciary system, because if the legal framework is not supporting the enforcement of the regulatory bodies, then yes, they are ultimately powerless.